The warning, no one took seriously. The great hall of the Galactic Council was filled with the soft hum of voices, alien diplomats seated in curved rows, their eyes watching the central platform where the high speaker stood. The news had just arrived. Humans had begun moving more ships to the edge of Council space. It was nothing official, no declaration, no threats, just quiet movement, yet it had stirred whispers across the galaxy. From the back of the chamber, an older ambassador stepped forward, his skin a pale blue, his voice carrying an uneasy weight. "I advise caution," he said. "Do not provoke the humans." A few delegates laughed, some shaking their heads, one even muttering, "Humans, the loud children of the stars." Their comments were met with smirks and quiet chuckles. The ambassador continued, his eyes darting nervously around the hall. "I have seen what they can do. A pirate armada once tried to raid one of their colonies. The pirates didn't return, not one ship. They don't start wars. But if you bring war to them..." He let the sentence hang in the air. The high speaker dismissed him with a wave. "You speak from fear, old friend, not reason. We are united, they are few." The chamber erupted in soft agreement, voices blending into a hum of arrogance. Far from the grand halls of the council, on the cold edge of known space, a human outpost floated against the backdrop of a red star. Inside its command center, Captain Elias Rourke stood before a wall of monitors, his face lit by the soft blue glow of the screens. A transmission came in, unmarked, encrypted, old-style code no one used anymore. The comm officer frowned. "Sir, this isn't on any registry." Rourke walked over, his boots echoing on the metal floor. He glanced at the symbols on the screen and his jaw tightened. "Play it," he ordered. The voice that filled the room was distorted, but the message was clear. "They are coming for you. They believe you are weak. You must be ready." No name, no signature, just that chilling warning. Rourke looked around the control room, his officers waiting for his reaction. "Silent drills," he said at last. "Full combat readiness. No transmissions in or out unless coded." The crew obeyed without question. Lights dimmed, corridors emptied, ships in the docking bays began quiet refits, and all the while the red star outside burned on, uncaring. Back at the Galactic Council, plans moved forward. A coalition of 5 powerful species met in secret. They spoke of human overreach, of disciplining the Terrans before they grew too bold. They signed agreements to share fleets, weapons, and intelligence. The warning from the old ambassador was not mentioned again. Days later, Captain Rourke stood alone on the observation deck. He watched civilian freighters pass by, unaware of the storm building beyond the stars. He thought about Earth, about the families who trusted men like him to keep them safe. He reached for a small device on his belt and entered a sequence known to only a handful of people in the entire human fleet. A single phrase flashed on the screen before being sent into the encrypted void. Protocol Black Dawn. On Earth, far away from the quiet desperation of the outpost, Admiral Helena Vega was in her private study when the alert reached her desk. The message blinked twice, then vanished, leaving only those 3 words. Her hand rested on the polished wood for a moment. She closed her eyes, remembering battles long past. She had hoped never to see this protocol again. She rose without a word and left her quarters, walking straight to the war room. Inside, massive holographic displays lit up. Tactical officers stood ready, and in the corner, the dark shape of the HSS Leviathan project awaited activation orders. Meanwhile, in the Coalition's War Council, alien commanders finalized their attack routes. Their target, 3 human colonies and the Rim outpost commanded by Rourke. They believed the humans would fight briefly, then surrender. Their intelligence suggested humans lacked the numbers to resist. In truth, they had no idea what humanity kept hidden in the cold shadows of space. Night fell on the outpost, its metal corridors dim under emergency lighting. The crew moved in silence, every movement precise, every look sharp with focus. Rourke stood at the heart of the command center, watching the stars. "They think they can scare us," he said quietly to his second-in-command. "Let's show them why that's a mistake." The officer nodded, and in that moment, the first pieces of a much larger game began to shift. The galaxy didn't know it yet, but history had just changed, and when the dust would settle, no one would ever speak of threatening humanity again. The first strike. The stars above the human outpost looked calm, but Captain Rourke knew better. Calm skies often came before the most violent storms. In the early hours of the third cycle, the coalition fleet arrived. They did not come in silence. Every jump signature flared across space like a challenge. Hundreds of warships slid into formation, black hulls shining under distant starlight. Their weapons charged, their banners displayed. From the command deck, Rourke stood with his hands behind his back, eyes locked on the incoming blips. "No open channels," he ordered. "Let them talk to the void." The coalition flagship sent a transmission anyway, its voice smug and cold. "Terran commander, stand down and prepare for inspection. This is your only warning." Rourke didn't answer. He simply turned to his weapons officer and said, "Begin shadow protocol." Somewhere deep in the outpost, hidden compartments opened. Drone, the size of a man's hand, slipped into the black of space, invisible to scanners. They scattered like seeds on the wind, carrying data to unknown coordinates. The coalition made the first move. Their forward cruisers broke formation and surged forward. Plasma batteries roared to life, green fire tearing across the void. The first shot slammed into the outer defenses, sending shockwaves through the station's shields. In the war room of the flagship, alien officers grinned. "They'll fold in hours," one said. The admiral at their center simply nodded, certain this was already won. But far from the battle, deep under Earth's surface, massive hangar doors began to grind open. Inside slept war machines the galaxy had not seen in centuries. Old names etched into their hulls: Vigilance, Ironclad, Nemesis. Ships that had ended wars, ships mothballed for a future emergency, ships whose time had come again. On the outpost, Rourke's comm officer reported, "Civilian transports are clear of the system. All non-combatants evacuated." Rourke nodded slowly. "Good. Now we fight without hesitation." The coalition unleashed a second wave. Fighters poured from their carriers like a swarm of metal locusts. They dived at the outpost weapon arrays, cannons blazed, hull plating burned. Yet even as the battle raged, Rourke gave no order to return fire. The enemy commanders mistook silence for weakness. Their ships pressed harder, cutting deep into the outpost's defenses. And then, without warning, the darkness around them shifted. Massive shadows emerged where there had been nothing. Human warships uncloaked in perfect silence, each one aligned for the kill. Their arrival was so sudden that the coalition fleet hesitated, just for a heartbeat. That heartbeat was all the humans needed. Rourke's voice was calm, almost cold. Fire. The first volley hit like a god's hammer. Railguns slug. Tore through shields and hulls alike. Coalition cruisers vanished in blinding white flashes. Carriers staggered under the impacts, spilling broken fighters into space. The alien flagship sensors went wild, hundreds of error alarms screaming. The admiral shouted orders, but the battle was already slipping away. In the shadows of Jupiter, Admiral Vega received the full tactical feed. She didn't smile. She simply whispered to herself, "The first strike is theirs. The last will be ours." Back at the front, Rourke's warships moved like predators, appearing and disappearing between bursts of fire. The coalition tried to regroup, but their formations crumbled under the precision assault. The battle was not yet over, but one truth was already written in the stars. This would not be the easy victory they had promised their leaders. This was the beginning of something the galaxy had not seen in generations, something they would come to fear. The silence before the storm, the battlefield drifted in uneasy quiet. Wreckage from the coalition's first attack floated like frozen corpses in the void. The fires of shattered ships burned dimly, fading into the cold black. Captain Rourke stood at the command table, the blue glow of the tactical map flickering against his face. The enemy had pulled back, too far for immediate engagement, too close to be considered retreat. "They're waiting for reinforcements," his second-in-command whispered. Rourke shook his head slowly. "No, they're waiting for us to move first." Out in the empty stretch between fleets, strange signals began to appear. A burst of static here, a ghost blip there. Enemy sensors registered phantom warships that vanished as quickly as they appeared. The coalition commanders grew restless, their crews whispering about human tricks and cursed scanners. One alien officer swore he saw a human ship glide past their formation without triggering alarms. His superiors dismissed it as battle stress. On Earth, Admiral Vega was in the Leviathan's war room. The walls vibrated faintly as The giant supercarrier's engines warmed. Around her, officers spoke in low tones, dispatching coded orders to fleets scattered across deep space. The coalition fleet sent another message to Rourke's outpost. You have one final chance to surrender. Rourke listened without emotion, then cut the channel before they could finish. His only reply was to send a single transmission to every enemy warship, a voice calm and deadly. You came to our home, now we come to yours. That message didn't just reach the coalition fleet, it leaked. It was intercepted by independent traders, pirate relays, and civilian comm nets. Within hours, it spread across the galaxy like wildfire. Entire spaceports fell silent as the recording played over and over. Merchants began canceling shipments to coalition space. Civilian planets started quiet evacuations. No one wanted to be near the coming storm. On the coalition flagship, the admiral stared at the playback of Rourke's voice. It was too calm, too certain. He felt a weight in his chest that no armor could protect against. And then the strangest thing happened. Human ships stopped moving. No attacks, no signals, nothing, just stillness. Hours passed. The silence became suffocating. Coalition crews slept in shifts, weapons primed, eyes on sensors. Every shadow in space felt dangerous. Every flicker of light could be the beginning of the end. The truth was worse. The humans were not idle. They were hunting, quietly mapping every coalition fleet, every supply line, every weakness. When the strike came, it would not be to reclaim territory. It would be to break the enemy's ability to ever lift a weapon against humanity again. Somewhere in the darkness, hidden deep in the black between stars, the Leviathan was moving, and when it arrived, the silence would end. The first human retaliation. The coalition fleet floated in uneasy formation, engines burning low, their captains watching for movement that never came. They didn't know the humans were already gone. They didn't know the storm had already passed them by and was now racing straight for their homes. In the black gulf between stars, the first human retaliation began. They didn't send warnings. They didn't declare war. They simply appeared. One moment the systems were calm, space lanes crowded with freighters, patrols cruising without fear. The next moment the night exploded. Human warships dropped out of FTL inside coalition territory. Not just one fleet, dozens. Each strike group already locked onto their target. Orbital fuel depots vanished in blossoms of white light. Shipyards were torn apart by railgun fire that pierced kilometer-thick armor like it was glass. Communications hubs were turned into drifting debris before they could even send a distress call. In the mining rings of the Jorath system, workers looked up from their stations and saw a shadow move across the stars. It was a human cruiser, silent, massive, blocking out the light as it glided past. Seconds later, every enemy defense platform in the system went dark. Admiral Vega watched the battle feed from the Leviathan. Her officers reported success after success, but her expression remained cold. This isn't revenge, she said quietly. This is prevention. In the capital system of one coalition member, alarms screamed as human ships dropped into orbit. The alien navy scrambled its forces, but their ships couldn't form up before the first wave of human fire smashed through their lines. Shields failed in seconds, engines burned out, escape pods were jettisoned into the void. What shocked the galaxy wasn't just the destruction, it was the precision. Human ships hit only military targets, sparing civilia. In centers, the message was clear. We can destroy you without touching your people, unless you force us to. Coalition admirals tried to coordinate a counterattack, but every time they rallied in one sector, another human fleet struck on the opposite side of their territory. It was as if humanity had been inside their war rooms, reading every plan before it was made. Some coalition worlds went dark on their own, shutting down all power to hide from human sensors. Others began sending out quiet offers of surrender, desperate to avoid being next. On the outpost, Captain Rourke received the incoming reports with grim satisfaction. They wanted to see what happens when you cross us, he said. Now they know. But even this was not the true blow. The galaxy had yet to see humanity's most feared weapon, and when it arrived, the war would end in a single heartbeat. The weapon no one believed was real. The galaxy thought it had seen humanity's fury. They were wrong. Far beyond the front lines, hidden in the cold shadow of Jupiter, a monster began to wake. The HSS Leviathan. A ship so vast it looked less like a vessel and more like a moving continent. Its hull was black as the void, broken only by streaks of faint silver where ancient battles had left their mark. For decades it had slept, sealed in a secret dockyard, spoken of only in whispers by old soldiers who no one believed. Deep inside its armored core, reactors older than some civilizations roared to life. The sound was like the heartbeat of a god, steady, unstoppable. Massive docking clamps released with a thunderous groan. Giant shadows of its escort fleet drifted into position around it, their tiny forms dwarfed by the Leviathan's size. On the command bridge, Admiral Vega stood at the central console. Her eyes scanned the system's display, every weapon indicator turning green one after another. She placed her hand on the activation panel and spoke softly, "Wake up, old friend, it's time." In the war rooms of the Coalition, intelligence officers screamed as an impossible reading appeared on their sensors. A ship mass so large it shouldn't be able to move at FTL speed, yet it was moving, and fast. One officer whispered, "That's not possible," but the numbers didn't lie. The Leviathan's first jump shattered the calm of the Coalition's capital system. It emerged from the void like a black eclipse, blotting out the sun for those on the surface. Entire fleets turned their guns toward it. It didn't flinch. Vega opened a channel to every ship in the system, her voice carrying across space. "This ends now. You will never lift a weapon against humanity again." The first barrage from the Leviathan wasn't a beam or missile. It was a storm. Railgun slugs the size of small ships tore through multiple enemy vessels in a single shot. Kinetic strikes flattened orbital fortresses in seconds. The shockwaves rolled across the system, shaking moons in their orbits. Coalition admirals shouted frantic orders, but their fleets melted under the relentless assault. Every shield failed, every formation broke. Yet, incredibly, the Leviathan's weapons never once targeted a civilian habitat. It was not slaughter, it was dominance, pure and unquestionable. Across the galaxy, live feeds of the battle reached every world. Children watched in stunned silence. Traders froze mid-transaction. Even pirates abandoned raids to stare at the screens. The message was clear. This is humanity's final warning, and for the first time in centuries the galaxy was united in one thought. Do not cross the humans. The collapse of the Coalition. The Coalition's proud fleets were in ruins. What was once a wall of steel and fire had become scattered debris drifting in cold space. The Leviathan hung at the center of it all, silent, like a predator that had already decided the fight was over in the Capit. Al system, the last organized resistance, broke within minutes. Enemy ships turned and ran, some ignoring direct orders, others surrendering before a single human shot hit them. Entire squadrons transmitted distress codes, begging to be spared. Captain Rourke, watching from his forward command ship, received a flood of intercepted comms. Some were desperate calls for help, others were panicked arguments between Coalition admirals. One message simply repeated over and over, "We can't stop them." Admiral Vega's voice came over every channel in the Coalition's command network. "This is your only choice. Withdraw from human space and pay for every life you've taken. Refuse, and we will erase your fleets from the stars." On the Coalition Council world, their leader stood in his war room, eyes fixed on the live feed of the Leviathan over his capital. The shadow of the ship blotted out the sun, its presence crushing the morale of billions. His advisors shouted conflicting strategies: fight, hide, negotiate. But he could see the truth in the faces of his generals. They were beaten. Human strike teams moved through occupied systems with surgical precision. Weapons depots detonated in controlled blasts. Warlords who had laughed at humanity only weeks ago were now broadcasting unconditional surrender. Every victory was being streamed across the galaxy, and with each passing hour, more Coalition worlds broke away, refusing to fight a war they could not win. Vega gave the Coalition leader 1 hour to decide. The weight of the galaxy pressed down on him as the clock ticked. Ships still burned in orbit. The screams of his people echoed in the comms, and above it all, the Leviathan waited, unmoving. When the final minute came, the leader's voice cracked as he spoke the words the galaxy never expected to hear. "We surrender." Within seconds, human forces began to stand down. The boss. Battle was over, but the message was carved deep into the stars. No one would ever dare threaten Earth again. The day the galaxy changed forever. The war ended not with a final shot, but with silence, a silence so heavy that it seemed to echo across the stars. The Leviathan drifted above the coalition capital, its weapons idle, its black hull reflecting the pale light of a sun that now shone on a defeated empire. In the Galactic Council, delegates who had once mocked humanity now sat in stunned quiet. The surrender treaty lay open on the table, signed in trembling hands. The terms were clear: total withdrawal from human space, reparations for every attack, and a permanent ban on coalition fleets entering Terran borders. No one argued. Across the galaxy, news feeds replayed the images again and again, the Leviathan blotting out suns, coalition fleets scattering in terror, human forces striking with perfect precision. It wasn't just a military victory. It was a rewriting of the balance of power. Captain Rourke returned to his outpost, the same place where the first warning had been received. The docking bay was filled with cheering civilians, engineers, and soldiers. But Rourke didn't smile. He simply walked to the flagpole at the center of the platform and raised the Terran banner high. The red, white, and black cloth caught the starlight. In that moment, the galaxy understood humanity didn't just survive, it endured. In quiet bars on distant stations, traders whispered the new saying spreading like wildfire. You can trade with humans, you can befriend humans, but you never, ever threaten them. Admiral Vega stood alone on the Leviathan's observation deck, looking out at the stars. She knew this victory would be remembered for centuries, but she also knew it was a warning. The galaxy now feared humanity, and that fear would keep the peace. For now,